I am recording this with two German Shepherds next to me, so at any point they are bound to go crazy. So I'll try to edit that out later, hopefully. But
Love that.
yeah. So Lior Cole, welcome back to the Fosterfy podcast. It has been about a year and a little bit since we've spoken, so I can't wait to hear everything that you've been up to and what you're looking forward to in 2025. But how you doing today? And long time no see.
Doing great today. I'm excited for this.
Yeah, so if my memory served me correctly, we met at the Pomp Christmas party of 2024. I don't know if you were able to go back this year. I wasn't. Were you? Yeah. So I didn't get the invite from him like I did the year before because I actually had him on this podcast right before that party happened in 2024. But then I reached out to him and I was like, I'd love to go back. Is it happening again this year? And he got back to me like the day it was happening. So I was like, oh, shoot. But look at that. Connections can be made at stuff like that. So if you're someone watching this from home, take advantage of those opportunities. But last time we spoke, it was all ShopARI. So what's the latest and greatest with ShopARI?
Oh my God, I don't even remember what the state was when we spoke, but I can give you the general updates most recent. We raised a funding round. I know we had a little bit of funding when I spoke to you last, but that was really just like an angel round of people who are making offers, really. And now we closed a pre-seed funding round. That was Bloomberg Beta, Correlation Ventures, and Daybreak Ventures, and then a couple other angels that came in on that. And we recruited our team. So we really just did a lot of like very rapid iteration of the product. I think when I spoke to you last, we had a general idea of like the problem. And I say we, but I mean I had like a general idea of like what problem we want to focus on and doing a lot of research around that, a lot of testing around that. But from there, the iteration started to grow into like, what does that actually look like showing up into the world? Not so much like, what is the problem? Because we already like kind of confirmed that. And then build a team around that after funding, built everything that I was building in a very like flimsy prototype status into some like really robust technology that I'm really excited about. And yeah, now we're getting ready to go to market.
Exciting stuff. So for someone who maybe didn't catch our first discussion and is new to all of this, maybe give a little bit of a background about what you're building and what's so exciting.
So yeah, my background, I was studying computer science at Cornell. I got really lucky, got scouted by designer Batsheva Hay off the street of New York City. She asked me to do this photo shoot for Vogue Runway on the spot, which I did. And I was actually in Vogue Runway, and then IMG signed me immediately after that. And then I opened this like huge New York Fashion Week show right after that, and went to Milan and Paris Fashion Week and was doing all the shows over there. And it was just like a very, very crazy time and very unexpected. So I had to take the semester off of school. Didn't realize that Fashion Week actually was Fashion Month over a month. And so, yeah, I had to take the semester off of school. I was building these like little fun tech projects on the side, as I always have, but especially because I was no longer in school for the semester, I had extra time while I was modeling to kind of just like build things for fun. One of those projects was very similar to ChatGPT before ChatGPT came out. And so I posted on my Instagram and it had like this crazy reaction. People just weren't, I guess, used to seeing AI in this sort of like sentient like capacity, like they now understand it to be with ChatGPT and similar products. And so that project ended up on BBC and Vogue and like all these news outlets were covering it. And so that press basically just associated me with my technical background and facilitated really interesting conversations about AI and fashion and what the potential is when I was navigating spaces with a lot of people in the fashion industry at photo shoots and events and things like that. And those conversations really just inherently influenced the projects that I was building for fun. One of those projects got attention from an early investor, 1517 VC, who ultimately put in an offer. I really didn't have any sort of solidified idea, or I didn't even really have like once I took the investment, I had an incorporated company, but I wasn't incorporated when I met the partner who ultimately led the investment. And yeah, I took that basically to iterate really quickly on just different concept or different products within that could be in this like problem space. really just quickly learned what being a founder means. And that's, I think, an ongoing process that never really ends. But ultimately, landed on the product that was really sticky, raised an actual pre-seed funding round off of that. And then we built that team around it, and here we are.
Yeah, so you kind of hinted at it with building on the fly, but being a young entrepreneur, and I think this was your first like real business that you're founding. I'm so curious about like how the past year has gone, what your expectations were at the start of the year, and then how they may have changed or what you learned, the biggest surprising things, and just how your experience has been starting this company.
Okay, I would say the biggest thing that I learned, I would say, is kind of like a skill. It's how to effectively interpret and absorb information around you from other people. I think in the beginning, I definitely fell prey to the idea that it's like almost like imposter syndrome, but it's not so much like I am like the typical imposter syndrome. It's more like if this person who is an expert, who has like a unicorn, like 2 unicorn exits and like whatever stuff like that, is telling me that like this one part of my idea should change, like surely if I disagree with that, I'm incorrect and this person is correct. And like thinking that there are all of these experts that are just like these all-knowing people. I think what I learned is ultimately there are no facts here and there is no one right way to do things. And if you are the person that is building the company, you are the one that has the most context on everything, and you're the one that's eat, sleep, breathing everything. And so no matter where certain advice or information is coming from, the most reputable news source, the most reputable person, whatever it is, like that information is valuable only to the extent that you want to integrate it into your approach. And so I think it's like kind of a skill of being able to distill what is effective for you to inform your path and everything, but still like giving opinions and ideas and things like that you don't agree with the same amount of attention as the ones that you do agree with, but just like understanding that you're the ultimate decision maker, I guess, is the biggest one.
Staying true to yourself, it sounds like, while taking in the input from everybody else, and probably like the AI you're building, combining it all together and finding out the perfect output of it, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like, myself and others who probably aren't as, in the minutia of like the entrepreneurial world, we would think from the outside in like that if someone like you is going to start a company, you start a company and then like a week later there's a product, or like almost initially, right? Like the idea is had and a product is made. But now, so I've talked to you a year ago and now, and I don't think there's like an active product yet. So I feel like you can shine some light on that. As someone who's now talked to a lot of these founders, the unicorn people, and yourself being a founder of a startup, can you speak to a long timeline in the process of building something versus just like speeding through everything?
I do think that there is merit to having an idea, building it, shipping it. Like that's something that can happen within a weekend, which is what we actually did, or what I did in the first weekend, which was basically just like, okay, I mean, the idea was so different in the beginning, so I'm not even gonna like bore you with the details there, but basically it was like this humanized interface with specific AI utility. And I was like, okay, I'll just make this wrapper on top of GPT-3 or GPT, whatever the state of the newest one was at the time. Put some sort of like scrappy interface together and then test it out. And that was done in 3 days. And I think that's definitely an approach where you would launch that publicly and then you would continue to iterate off of that. And then I think where my mind is, like, I like doing things very controlled. Like I definitely have launched a lot of approaches towards this and a lot of different, just like ingesting different information and trying different things out and seeing what the response is and things like that. And so there are a lot of like product launches, but it's not like product launches that you'll see like the Rabbit R1 video, because my preference is like doing a lot of controlled little launches, attempts, and I'm very like data driven. So like getting a lot of feedback on that, iterating, keeping everything very controlled. I think when I think about order of priority, I always keep these 3 pillars, which is like first branding, second is retention, and third is user growth. Branding meaning like this is like world building. Like why do you have some sort of like visceral reaction when you hear OpenAI versus like some other AI chatbot app? And I think that's like this very difficult to achieve like world that you have to build around your company. And that's like my first priority, is making sure that we maintain the specific vision. And then the second priority is user retention, which is like why we do all these little micro product launches that nobody hears about, because I want to make sure that everyone is sticking. And then after that, when you get that flywheel, that's when you do like the big growth. So that's, I think, where we're headed now. Like we're really towards that final pillar of like, we're ready for the world to see what we are doing. But yeah, that's how I think about it. But no right answers.
Yeah, everything's a little different, I guess, with everybody's experience. What I'm curious is, I think you mentioned how like the version of ChatGPT you were using when I talked to you last, and that with this AI world just updating and like at the speed of light, things are progressing. Are you having to like change your product or what you envision ShopARI being based on the new AI products that come out?
For us, I think this is something that I've always envisioned, playing with and building AI projects since before ChatGPT. I think there was a general understanding that like this is the path to AGI. And so I don't think that there was any sort of like, oh no, OpenAI is doing what we are doing or anything like that. For us, it's only been beneficial where everything that's coming out is just helping us build faster. If we were building like an all-encompassing chatbot, I'd be like, okay, we're screwed now, because OpenAI is like, shoulders and heads above everyone else. But I think for the most part, it's actually like beneficial to most startups, like everything that's coming out, rather than like eating the startup, because the developer tools are just so good.
So it sounded like you think OpenAI is the best. I was going to ask about that because I know there's like Anthropic, Gemini, OpenAI, and all these competitors cloud now. But OpenAI is the one you think is the best at this point?
It depends on what you're asking. For consumer, I think OpenAI, ChatGPT is obviously a good one, but it's different. Like the responses are different. It's kind of like how you have different people for different, or different friends for different situations and stuff like that. Whereas like if you're talking about actual developer tools, OpenAI can be like super expensive, inflexible. I mean, sometimes it's really good, but there's other like LLMs and other software, other developer tools that are better.
I know Meta is building theirs open source with Lava. Is something like that helpful to you, and that community of engineers and builders doing stuff in a public format in that sense?
Yeah, everything that's happening publicly is ultimately going to be beneficial to us, whether we use that specific tool or whether though that development is just going to inspire other development that we ultimately use. Like everyone's just, all ships rise with the tide.
Now, how big is the team of ShopARI? And I think what a lot of people like myself would be curious about is someone like you who's gone through the process of like starting a company, raising funds, but you're not getting like revenue from a product or anything. So how are you able to survive? Like, does part of the fundraising that you've done help you, with your living and cover all of that stuff? Because from an outsider like me, it seems like such a tough thing to start doing unless like you have another job. Oh, I guess you're a model too, so maybe that helps you out. But so yeah, how is that working out for you?
Yeah. As far as like what keeps the light on, I mean, before revenue for a startup, it will be like VC dollars, but it's also just like keeping costs as low as possible. Like we are quite literally 3 people. We're onboarding a 4th person right now, but everyone is getting paid way less than they could get anywhere else. I know I took literally just like the minimum amount, the amount that I would need to like eat and just like generally live.
Okay, so yeah, that makes sense to me because I have this Fosterfy channel, but then I've also started doing work for this company called Prospero AI, which is like a finance AI app. We have like our own signals, but I interviewed the CEO of that company on my channel, and then just to be involved with them, I kind of did something similar to what you were saying, where I was just like, I'll work for basically nothing, just want to be involved, and it's grown since, which is nice for someone who's looking to get involved. Like you kind of have to go get it versus it being handed to you, I guess is what we're saying. Can maybe take a leap of faith if you're going to try and build something like that. So when we were talking before the interview started today, you were saying about how maybe there's a timeline that could be coming soon for some type of launch. I don't know how much we can talk about it, but if there's any details we can give, what are they?
Yeah, we're just gonna put out, I think, like our first piece of content that is like, this is what we are doing. Like, this is the context, this is the product, this is where you can sign up for it, which I know we've kind of been we've had like a couple of like little breadcrumbs here and there, but to have like a source of truth, like this is who we are, this is what we're doing, document, we're ready for that now. So yeah, stay tuned for when we post that.
So I think last time when we talked, I was kind of in my mind, a fashion stylist AI tool would be more geared towards women, I guess. But you were saying you were trying to build it for everybody to help out everybody. Is it still that way? You said you're data driven. Have you tested like how the reception has been of people that have
Absolutely.
tried it?
Yeah. So the high level goal is like we are building the future of human self expression. Every person shows up as a certain version of themselves physically in the world. It's the nature of being a human. And that is not exclusive to being a woman, that's exclusive to being a human. And so our goal is ultimately to be able to be this like centralized hub for everything fashion related, everything self-expression related, and everyone can find themselves on that platform. And I think that is very aligned with the product that we're trying to build regardless, because every person has so many facets to their identity, no matter who you are. And so if we are this holistic app that can really support anyone and everyone and anyone, we can also support all of those little like niche components to your identity that you haven't been able to find in one place before, because every marketplace right now for fashion is very curated based on like a distinct style.
And you're really unique because of your connection between the fashion world and the tech world. I imagine that gives you a big advantage in trying to achieve something like what you want to do. Have you seen any competitors pop up in the past year that are real challengers for you, or are you still kind of in a lane of your own right now?
Yeah, I think being in a lane of your own is actually like that would be a concern to me. I think when I think about competitors, I think like this is clearly a huge opportunity space, and so there are going to be a lot of people who are looking to build within it. And if you are in a lane of your own, either the opportunity space is not so big, or it's something that is like just not feasible to actually like build, like it's way ahead of its time, or something like that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of other attempts. I think early stage companies, like I'm just fully focused on building what we are building. Realistically, everyone is going to iterate so fast. I know we were so different when we started. So we're just gonna like find our way on our own, and like we all kind of keep an eye on the ecosystem and everything like that. But yeah, I think that's the answer to your question.
And I'm curious if, like, I think you're going to start with, being the hub, being your website, and if you put out an app or whatever. But do you ever think you'll be integrated to say, like, where, like, a Macy's or whatever, any, like, clothing store could have, like, your tech integrated with their website where you could give suggestions and fashion tips and styling outside of your ecosystem?
Maybe for now we're just focused on D2C, but there has been definitely like interest from the industry to do stuff like that, but not the focus.
Yeah, I guess the focus on building at home first, then you can venture out. That makes a lot of sense. I'm wondering, like, well, I guess you raised funds. I don't know if you had to do that multiple times or not, but how has that gone for you? Were people excited? I know the AI space is the talk of the town for the business and stock market. So I'm sure there's a lot of people eager to invest in that space. Was it easy to speak to VCs, and were they excited about it, or did you find difficulty in convincing them of the idea?
We closed our round within 3 weeks, and it was definitely like oversubscribed. There are still people who have asked me to kind of like get in on it. I'm like, we've been closed, you know? So I would say that, yeah, that was definitely a very competitive round. But I think it's interesting when you wonder like, why is that the case? Because while AI is really hot right now, it's not like every AI company is getting funding thrown at it. I think in the early stage, it's really just like conviction in the individual person. And I'm like very privileged in the sense that I live in New York City and I have the ability to go to events like the one that I met you at. And there were people in my ecosystem that already had conviction in me as a person. And then when I just even started saying that I'm thinking about opening around, started, wanting to get in on it because they already knew me from before. I don't know if that would be the case if I was like in the middle of nowhere, that like, I wasn't able to have all these like serendipitous moments. So yeah, it was definitely a competitive round for us, but I recognize that I'm like super privileged to be surrounded by the people that ended up participating.
I like how you didn't want to name anywhere. I'll say it, probably in Kansas somewhere. You probably wouldn't have had the opportunity. But I know you like you carry yourself as a humble person, but I want to like dig into that point you made where they were investing in the person versus the idea or the business. Do you think there's a lot of truth to that? I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying there is, and that if you're going to want to attract funds, or if you're someone who wants to pursue a business, you have to make sure like your habits, your personality, your drive and passion is there first before you go out and ask for anything from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. Why see invest in people who are just the people? Like they care so much about anything. That's like a good standard to think about just because they're YC. But like I was saying before, like the idea changes so fast. Like everyone has good ideas and things just iterate so quickly that like it really is completely reliant on the founder and the founding team and the first couple of hires and like all these people that like you have to make so many really really instrumental decisions all the time, like so fast. And so being able to be a person that absorbs information effectively and surrounds yourself with the right people and the right ecosystem just to be able to make those decisions without having to like go back to the drawing board every single time. Like having great instinct, I think, is really important. And then also like you have to be able to oscillate between that and execution. Like I know a lot of people who have such a great instinct, and they really should be people who have a really popular Substack or they do research or something. Like execution is not just putting together a Notion project management plan. It's like knocking on doors, like doing whatever it takes. And that also requires like an insane personality type that is just not cut out. Like I've been awake for 48 hours before, and like you just have to be able to do stuff like that. Yeah. So I would say like very, very reliant on the person. Think about like I'm sure there's like, sorry, just one last thing. Think about how many interesting ideas there are in the world, and how many interesting ideas your friends have even brought to you, or like things like that, that like ultimately the person doesn't end up being the next Instagram or like whatever it is, kind of just like becomes an idea that is one of the many ideas. And then also like think about companies that you look at this thing and you're like, this is not actually like anything, but it's $1 billion company. And so like that I think is the best reflection of this point.
That's why I hate when people say like, "Oh, look how stupid that product is. Like, if only I had thought of that, I'd be a billionaire." It's like, well, no, you're kind of diminishing all the hard work that it really takes to actually execute on an idea that people overlook. And I'm sure in the past year there's been struggles or difficulties that have happened. Is there anything that comes to mind that you think you've experienced and gone through and pushed through that would be helpful for somebody here? A difficulty that you've had to overcome so far?
I think probably the biggest thing in that realm that I've learned over the past year is kind of just like how to balance being a person with a life and also being a person with a company that's like also a life. So what I mean by that is like I look at some of the people that surround me and friends and things like that are on a very typical path, which is it's kind of like set up in a way that there are certain standards, I guess, or like there are certain things that you don't really have to think about on your own. Like when you go, like the plans on the weekend are very repetitive. Like or not so much repetitive. It's just, you don't have to think so much about how to architect every hour and minute and structure of your day and life. Whereas when you have a company, like I'm on my computer until 3 a.m. every morning, and then I go to sleep, and then I wake up and I'm on my computer again. And like, how do you justify like going to do a workout, or how do you fit in and justify like going to see a friend once in a while? Like, what is the right balance of that? And I think ultimately my thinking about this in the beginning was it is selfish of me and a detriment to the company to do literally anything except for build the company. And that was the worst probably decision for both me and the company ever. Like health plummeted. I didn't see like friends for so long that like my decision making ability was just like not up to par because I just wasn't functioning optimally. Whereas now I recognize that like my responsibility is to make myself the best founder to lead this company. And that includes taking care of myself. And so I think it's a very big challenge when you're starting your first company to have to articulate and architect what does the structure of your life look like, because it's going to be unique to you. Like you can't really follow any other format.
Yeah, there has to be a balance in everything. And it sounds like maybe you had a period of burnout in the past year. What was the longest you spent away from thinking about ShopARI in the past year? Did you ever have to get away for like a week and just reset your mind?
No, I don't think I ever turn off necessarily, but that is, I guess, unique to me. Like I don't have the need to like turn off even for like a full day. But what I realize is like I do need to be on like a schedule of like working out, eating regular food, seeing friends once in a while, just like bare life necessities.
I saw you posted on LinkedIn that you wanted to be more public in your building in the future. And I was wondering, it must be of high importance to you for you to post about it and like share that with the world. So what did you recognize that you wanted to make that statement and then act on that in the future?
Well, what I realized, so this is kind of a weird answer, but I think a lot about object-oriented programming and how efficient it is, and how like the whole premise of it is like, don't repeat. Like if you're repeating code, you're doing something wrong. You should be creating an object and then creating instances of that object instead of repeating code. And so I carry that out a lot in my life, where for that specific scenario you're describing, I realized that there were so many ways that when I would share what we were doing, or when I would share my story or the company, or like anything that was like that I would have shared if I was building in public, but I just wasn't building in public. So it's just on my notes app or whatever. And I just repeat it to people, was bringing in a lot of opportunity, whether it was like access to talent, access to like marketing channels, or just like different things like that. But what I realized, going back to the object oriented programming thing, is like, I was repeating myself so much. Like so much of our plans ended up being like filling a full day of meetings where I was literally saying the same thing over and over and over again, like updating people. And I realized that to do that at scale, I should just have a platform that people can stay tuned without me. Like I have to scale myself. So that was the thinking there.
And we've talked about kind of how your company is using AI in the product, but are you using AI yourself to help build you? Like I was wondering when you were talking about coding, how much coding is done with AI, and maybe more than it used to be, even for yourself. I've seen some crazy stories, I think, from like maybe coming out of either Amazon or Google, where like 75% of the code they're making now is AI, and then people, work on it after. Is that similar to what you're doing?
Yeah, so I'm like totally removed from coding now. I'm like architecting everything with my team, and we have to stand up every day. But luckily, I'm no longer actually writing the code. I'm definitely not the best person for the job there. But I know that my team is actively using tools like AI tools to help them with the process. And I'm like very pro that. I'm very pro like this. The objective is to do this in the fastest, most efficient way possible without sacrificing quality. And if that means using anything, go for it. And my engineers, like they have like 20 plus years of experience, and they're still doing stuff like that. And I know like other people with similar experience, they're like advising their kids to not study computer science because it's like there's no room for junior devs anymore. It's really just like someone who can lead the AI tools, not someone, junior. So yeah, very pro that.
It's pretty scary for myself. I've heard, smart people debate on whether AI is going to create more jobs or take more jobs, and how, the thing people always say and they point to is how like every time a technology was created throughout history, people were worried that it was going to take jobs, and it hasn't. It's kind of created them. So it seems like that's going to happen again. But while you're living in the moment and you look at all the stuff that AI can do now that people used to do, I don't know. Where do you find yourself on that debate?
So I use the analogy a lot of like the difference between photography and painting, where painters probably were not happy about photography because you're spending all your life like learning how to paint something point blank, and then a camera can just do the exact same thing in like 1 second. But then what the overall effect was that just like the industry expanded to actually be more aligned with what the value of being a human is, where you no longer were expected to create realism, and now there's like abstract and interpretation and things like that. And so both kind of live in harmony, and the service area of creation is expanded for the painter, and then also for anyone who wasn't aligned with being a painter, but now can also express themselves visually through photography. So I think at the end of the day, like, there will definitely be a lot of short-term pain. The photographer that only knows, or the painter that only knows realism, is like definitely out of work. But overall, it just expands the service area for creation across the board, and in my opinion, creates more of an alignment with what people do best, which is orchestrating executioners rather than being an executioner on their own.
While we're on this topic of like AI, art, painting, and whatnot, I'm curious, how much when you are building your company, do you think of yourself as an artist versus being like very rigid and kind of, like you said before, data driven? Like there's two ends of the spectrum there. Do you try to have fun in what you're building, or do you find yourself being very strict, and where do you find the balance there?
Yeah, when people say like, what is the role of CEO, I'm just like, I don't say artist. I usually say I'm like creative director. Like there's no rule. I mean, I think it's a balance. I think that people need structure to some extent, and so we have things like daily stand-ups and weekly sprints and online project management stuff and things like that. But the thing to be really strict on and really like type A about is the objective. Like the objective in execution is like speed and quality, finding the right balance between the two. And then the objective in the like product building and feature building, whatever, is like, I mean, it depends on which area you are. If it's like the design, then it's like usability, and then alignment with branding and overall, like aesthetic appeal. And then if you're talking about like the software tech, just like general infrastructure, is like mostly just strength. It's the balance between shipping fast and like the strength of the code itself. And then if you're talking about like the AI technical component, it's like finding the right balance between research, R&D, like building something that has an actual value add. It is not just like a flimsy wrapper on top of something, unless that creates value add. I mean, then go for it. And then also doing whatever, like basically building whatever the minimum amount of sizable value add is, so that you have the right balance of like speed and like product building. But it's a balance. And the thing to be the most rigid about is always the objective rather than the execution of the objective, because the execution of the objective is always going to be in flux.
So since you're going to be launching something soon, are you focusing at all on the marketing of it, or is it too early to do that? And then if that's going to be the case, what's the strategy there? I see a ton of like people that are building stuff now, and even like artists, people that are, have just made a movie or whatnot. They do like a podcast circuit. Are kind of funny when I go to watch my usual podcast, and it's like the same guest is on there, like 3 of them in like 1 week, because they're promoting something. Do you think that's the best strategy as like someone who's building a business now? Like, is that the hack, or another passion, even just like ads on social media or your own content on social media? How do you think about that?
I think that marketing is a funny word. I just looked up like, what is the definition of marketing? The activity or business of promoting and selling products and services, including marketing, research, and advertising. I don't know about like promoting and selling. I think that definition is like here, and you should be thinking on like a higher level if you want to actually build a sustainable business. If you want to build something that's like seed to sell, then I think totally marketing, like the straight definition of that, makes sense. But when I think about those 3 pillars that I mentioned earlier, with like branding at the top, and then user retention, and then user growth, and branding really as like world building. Why do you have a visceral reaction when you think about Apple versus when you think about just a regular phone, or like unbranded phone? Or like, why do you have a visceral reaction with like Nike versus like an unbranded shoe, or OpenAI versus like any other chatbot assistant? And I think that is not achieved through what the definition of marketing is, which is like promoting and selling products. It's achieved through like this higher level thinking of like, how do we want to categorize ourselves in someone's brain? How do you fit yourself into the world to create that, into the world around us, to create like that sort of like aura around your company and product? And then you can do things like promoting it and selling it once you're like really big and you're really like, you really nail down the branding. But for the most part, I don't think that like OpenAI, for example, needs to be pushing so many Instagram ads, because they world built effectively, and now people just use them as the standard of just like the leader in the industry. Whereas like some other AI assistant that did not put in the legwork of like the really difficult thing, which is like creating a world and a brand around your company. They probably are just pushing a lot of ads, and then they will do some sort of like seed to sell into a company that actually did the world building, and then that just absorbs the technology and the product into their larger ecosystem.
I feel like what happens a lot nowadays is the CEOs and the founders have their own personal brand, and then they're connected to the company. Even the reverse works, where it's like, an influencer like Logan Paul, Jake Paul, Mr. Beast, they all have their own companies now that they kind of built after they were famous. But then you also have people like Sam Altman, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Zuckerberg. They have their own personal brands. And it's been interesting to see Zuckerberg kind of seem like he really focused on changing his over the past year and the push he made in it. Do you think of like building your own brand outside of ShopARI, or are they connected in your mind?
Yeah, I definitely think about it. I think the halo effect is very real. I think Steve Jobs really nailed it. And I think all the examples that you gave are also really great examples. I don't think it's like a conscious thing. I think it's like this company is an extension of myself, because I wasn't starting a company when I started it. I was just having fun and doing things that I cared about. And I think that's the most natural version of what you're talking about, and ultimately the most effective, in my opinion, where someone is building something because it's an extension of who they are, then yeah, their personal brand and the company's brand is going to be one and the same, but it wasn't architected, or it wasn't like fabricated that way. Like my friend Avante building Posh ticketing platform, like he's a DJ, like he was building for the industry that he was already in. My friend Nusire Nas Daily, like he's an influencer that like he now created Nas.io, and that's like a platform for other influencers. And so I think when you see the most successful companies and versions of what you're talking about, like the founder brand and the company brand being one, it was not incredibly intentional. Like that was kind of just like a byproduct of building for yourself.
Yeah, I think the major point that I think about with all that, with what you just said, is like the value of being authentic to yourself and following your true passions and your dreams. And then it'll be easy to make those two things match of what we're talking about, personal versus your company, because, they're kind of one and the same, because your company is an extension of you. And I feel like when people are inauthentic, it's kind of, people are able to realize it very quickly from the outside. Like it doesn't last long at all. I'm curious about what are those things on your background? What do we have? We have cloudy with a chance of meatballs. I'm gonna make you big, so maybe we can see them. What are some of the other ones we have there?
Yeah, that's like the spray on shoes, which I feel like is my inner like child was always like the kid bringing the spray on shoes that like didn't actually work. And then that's the electromagnetic spectrum up there. I can go on a rant about that, but I'm just like generally very interested about like how we have this physical reality around us and how we can only perceive like a specific little sliver of it, but we exist within this like larger context that we like feel the like secondary effects of. So anyway, that's like that. This is a golden record, which I think is interesting to kind of like the attempt to distill what life is onto a record in so many ways for like potential life forms to just like interpret it, and just like shooting that out into the universe is like so interesting to me. That's the Steve Jobs computer saying hello. I think that is just like definitely has a lot of real estate in my mind as far as his thinking, very early thinking around like what is actually valuable. When everyone was thinking about just technological development, he was thinking about like the actual effect of what happens when a computer looks cute and has like a face and says hello, and like that actually being the differentiator. Same thing here. This like iMac campaign was interesting for like a bunch of different reasons. I think the colorway was a good choice. I really like that campaign overall. And then this is the picture of the first computer vision image, and just like a reason why the industry, well, one of the reasons why the industry is so male dominated is because this first first image that computer vision was built off of was essentially a porn star, and like this, if it was like her whole body, it's just like this like naked porn star person. And when you use that as the image for training models in computer vision, like the genesis of computer vision, and you're an all-male team, and then there's like a new person who's like a woman on the team, she's probably not going to feel very comfortable staying there. So I think just like an interesting part of history that may have influenced why been one of the influences and why it's so male dominated today.
But I love hearing the backstories of all that. I was so curious. I was thinking I have to ask about that at some point throughout the whole thing. Is there any we can't see, or we can see all of them on your wall?
Yeah, I can show you. So this, I don't know how clean my apartment is right now, but this is my wall, my cork board of just like white papers that I'm reading like for that week. So I don't know if people are interested, I guess they can pause. And then the other two is just the black hole and then AlphaGo. So yeah, the black hole image, or just black holes in general, is like also has a lot of real estate in my mind, because it's just so interesting that like the event horizon and like the concept similar to the electromagnetic spectrum stuff of like there is this perceivable, this reality that we can perceive, and then there's this reality that like we actually can't get any information about, even through secondary means, like what is beyond the electromagnetic spectrum. And I think that's like falls under like dark matter and like what is beyond the event horizon, where we don't actually have any information about it, but we know that it exists because of like the surrounding information that we get. So that's anyway, like something that I could talk about forever, but something that's interesting. And then AlphaGo for the obvious reasons of just like an amazing technological feat that is like inspiring to replicate and continue to evolve.
Well, you've talked about like kind of the interpretation of reality, and that's something I'm so curious about too. And I was actually talking with a couple of my buddies. I don't know how much Joe Rogan you watch, but there was this podcast. It's probably like 2 or so weeks old now. It was this guy, Thomas Campbell, on Joe Rogan. And I would highly recommend it to you, Lior, if you're interested in this stuff. He has this weird, I don't know if you want to call it a theory or whatever you want to call it, but where he can perceive alternate realities through a state of meditation. So, you know, it's far out there and you have to be someone who's open to hearing that type of stuff, but you would probably be highly interested in it. So, I don't know how much Joe Rogan you listen to. That one you probably like. What about the stuff that's written down to behind you? Does that have any? Is that part of ShopARI, or is that random thoughts?
This was like a 3 a.m. thought, which is just like it started as how I wanted to map out my personal website, and then it turned into this whole like what is the philosophy behind like the architecture of this stuff, and how do you like reflect it to be like reflect the way that I think about things. I don't even really know. It was 3 a.m. And then the other things are to-do notes.
So that's super cool that you have a wall that's like a wall that you can write on. You're not just writing on a wall, right? Like there's whatever.
No. Yeah, it's a wall that I can write on. I luckily have a very talented sister who somehow was able to put these stickers on the wall without any air bubbles.
That's pretty cool. And when you have a thought, how do you determine if it's valuable or not, and like to write it down or not? Yeah.
I'm so pro like not having any barrier between your thoughts and then the physical, like getting them out, which is why I have that whiteboard wall. I also write all over my windows. I just cleaned them off, but like there's literally like so much surface area for writing everywhere in here. Because I don't actually think you should ever write off anything. I think bad ideas are great for context of good ideas.
And the fact that you wrote that stuff down at 3 a.m., I don't know, maybe I'm a weirdo, maybe you're a weirdo like me, but I feel like sometimes when you're trying to fall asleep, it's like you get this burst of creativity and just like energy to think about whatever, you know, issues or random stuff that pops into your mind. But does that happen to you often where like it'll be late at night and you feel this creative burst of energy?
Yeah. I actually just went to the doctor a couple days ago because like I genuinely cannot fall asleep before 8 a.m. because everything is like moving so fast. So I take melatonin to like fall asleep by like 3 or 4, but it's a blessing and a curse. Like I do have to be awake during like normal hours also. So I do love the spurt of energy that happens at night, but also I'm like, okay, well now it's 8 a.m. and I have a meeting in an hour. So
have you ever, it sounds like you have, where you have something and you feel such a passion and like an energy for it where you just cannot go to sleep and you just would rather be working on it and you almost can't even control yourself. You just like follow the idea.
Pretty much every night, yes.
Yeah, I think I've heard Elon Musk talk about that kind of before, where like someone asked him about what it's like to be him, and he said like most people would not want to be me. And you see him, and he's the richest man in the world, and I guess he's a controversial figure now, but obviously had a lot of success in the business world. But just the amount of information and processing that's going on in his mind, it's probably almost unimaginable. And I guess a lot of people like yourself and people who are running businesses experience that as well.
Yeah, there's downsides to absolutely everything.
That's something I think about a lot. I don't know if everything is balanced, but like, there can't be good without bad. Everything must have like a negative and a positive. So I'm wondering, like, myself, is everything balanced out in the end, or are some things actually net good versus net bad, or does everything have a Polaroid reverse yin and yang to it?
I feel like I have no actual factual backing to this opinion, but it's just a feeling that I've always had is that like there must be some sort of like perfection, like there must be some sort of like perfect balance, but I don't think it's something that we'll ever actually experience. I think similar to like the electromagnetic spectrum stuff and stuff like that. I think we exist within this we exist this tiny like microscopic sliver in this way, like omnipresent almost reality that we can only perceive so much of it directly, and then beyond the stuff that we can perceive directly, we can have secondary means like different instruments and stuff to detect certain waves and like microwaves and whatever, just different ways like that. And then there's like the reality that exists beyond our ability to even perceive it through secondary means. And I think it only makes sense that there will be some sort of like cyclical, like yin yang perfection, or like there is, but I don't think it's something that we will ever be able to wrap our heads around, at least as a physical body.
Yeah, our human limitations coming into place again. Maybe AI with its superiority might help us understand it one day.
Yeah, singularity.
Yeah, it's coming quicker than we think. I'm a geek about like the way this conversation has gone, so I love that we went down that road. I don't edit all of the barks out, and everybody up there we go. There's probably going to be a few barks throughout this, so sorry everyone. You want to bring up anything else, or was there anything you were trying to discuss on here today?
Nothing. I also like the direction of this. This was definitely more fun than the typical podcast that I do.
It's been a pleasure. It's been really fun talking to you. Hopefully we'll do it again in the future. After maybe myself, I'll try out ShopARI. I'll be one of your first users. So until then, it's been great speaking with you. We'll talk soon.
All right. Thank you. This is fun.
Lior. Best of luck to you.
Thank you.